Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Better Left Unsaid Podcast with me, your host, Jamisha. Today we have a guest that is very special to my heart, someone that I feel like can relate to a lot of us who is going through navigating life with a hidden condition and a hidden disability, as well as the struggles of being a Black female. We have Jameisha Prescod. She is an amazing curator and someone that is so incredible at navigating her condition and doing it in such a beautiful way through her craft and production. So Jamisha, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thank you for having me.
But as we get into it, I want you to introduce yourself for all those of our viewers and listeners at home who have never seen you before and seen you for the first time.
So my name is Jameisha Prescod, as I was so graciously introduced by our lovely host. I'm an artist, filmmaker, content creator, writer, and lots of my work explores themes of illness, disability, and how that connects with like culture, identity, race, and all things like that. All of this came to be really because it's now 10 years ago. I was diagnosed with lupus, which is an autoimmune disease, but I was diagnosed while at film school, so it really disrupted what I thought my life was going to be like as a filmmaker. And so in a weird way, I sort of started making creative work that explored what it was like to live with an illness. And then as time went by, I sort of realized I had a bit of a knack for breaking down concepts, explaining stuff, and I'm just a bit of like a nerd, so like I like to understand why things happen and realize that, particularly like as a Black person with an illness and stuff, there's so many more layers to how we experience things, and I wanted to make stuff that sort of reflected that as well. So I guess that's a short introduction. I used to be I'm a journalist as well. I used to work for BBC, not anymore, but I do a lot of like journalistic work outside of as a freelancer as well. So I do a lot of random stuff. That's kind of sometimes how people go, what do you do? I'm like, random stuff.
A lot of everything.
Whenever someone pays, I guess it's whatever they want me to do, so within reason. But yeah, sorry.
Well, I feel like, as creatives, our talents and our likes and our loves really weave into each other, don't they? So when you go into a conversation and someone's like, what do you do? You're like, jack of all trades. Like, I do it all. Whatever you want me to do, I can do it. You've already touched upon it, but can you go into a little bit more information about how your illness really inspired your filmmaking and visual arts journey?
Well, I was like a typical film student. We were a bit annoying and a bit arrogant, We're like, I've got all these ideas for art and I'm going to do this and blah, blah, blah. I was like that. And I wanted to be a cinematographer. And for those who don't know, like, that's a very physical part of film, especially when you're starting out. You're often not shooting things, you're just holding stuff, carrying bags. But then literally being diagnosed around the same time as starting that made me realize I couldn't keep up. It was quite frustrating. But also in the film industry, it's kind of difficult because if you actually express that you have an illness and you need adjustments, you just won't be asked back. And even though technically people can say, well, that's not legal, it's like the film industry is full of freelancers. You just won't be asked back. So the question is whether like, should I just hide it and then sort of just carry on, or do I just not do film anymore? So I almost quit uni, but then I decided just try stuff in my own way. And I think that was the best thing, because then not only was I exploring just illness, which is just an interesting topic in general for me now, but it also allowed me to still sort of like indulge in that part of my creativity in my own way, in my own speed. And what that's meant now is just like it just opened up a world of I think stuff that wasn't or isn't explored as much as it should be in an artistic way, which there are quite a few artists doing, and they have laid the groundwork for me to do that. But also I think it's made me more patient in my art, more understanding. Lots of art, film, all sorts of creativity can be quite inaccessible. So it's actually in a way like allowed me to learn about other people's disabilities and how I can increase and be more sort of inclusive and have better representation outside of my personal experience of illness. So it really has informed almost every part of what I do now, to be honest with you. And my hope also is that when I'm speaking to other people who are creative, just to sort of get in there and be like, you should be more accessible as well, just to see if we could change things. So
Yeah, no, of course. I feel like that's really amazing. So how your work focuses on themes of disability, chronic illness, and Black identity. Can you share a little bit more about your own condition? How has that shaped your creative processes, because like you said, you couldn't run around and do what you needed to do for, you know, to grow in your career, but you took an alternative route. How has that helped you? How has that aided you? And how has that, you know, strengthened you to continue doing what you do now?
Well, I mean, I think, as you know very well yourself, I think having a chronic illness is extremely challenging, and you really do become quite a strong person mentally because of all of the hoops and the pushbacks that we have to go through. So I think similarly to you, I was dismissed quite a lot in the early stages of trying to be diagnosed with lupus. I was told it was in my head and I was making it up. These things are awful things that I wish no one had to go through. And I think it does in turn build a level of resilience and creativity, because also we're having to come up with ways to be heard and have to go sideways and strategizing on how they're going to get these people to listen to us. So I do think that sort of mindset and that kind of lateral thinking has aided my creativity in some ways. I think also just I'm a bit like nerdy, as I mentioned, and I always want to know why. So when I was being dismissed afterwards, I was like, I don't think these things come from nowhere. I think that there's a reason why certain things happen. I have other conditions too where my race was brought into it as well. And so a lot of my creativities are trying to ask more questions about why these things happen and how we can talk about them in a creative way. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think, that's what I would say.
No, I feel like the why is definitely something I'd like to say learning. I feel like I have my ebbs and flows when it comes to it. I feel like the why is definitely so important in terms of how you advocate for yourself, how you speak up for yourself, and it really can help aid in your recovery and your road to helping yourself and progressing. But I feel like for a lot of us, especially for people like me, I don't know if you're the same, who's a lot more reserved and timid. I became more reserved and timid because of my condition. I never used to be. I used to be the person you would see standing on the top of a bus going, woo, like loud, eccentric, the first person you could hear before you walk into a room. So I am learning the why, and it's really reassuring to hear you say that. But growing up in London, what was your experience? Because I feel like I can relate to this a lot. What was your experience navigating life with a hidden illness, a hidden disability, and being a Black female? And what was the biggest challenge you faced in navigating that?
It's a mix of things, and there's like layers of that. When I was like first diagnosed, London is like very fast paced. It's very like, you know, you got to walk here, you got to get stuff done. And when you have an illness, like I was really hard on myself because of like, that's how I'm used to things, and I couldn't be as fast and I couldn't get the stairs as much, and so there was a lot of negative self-talk of like, you need to work harder, you're just not working hard enough. And like, you know, sometimes also with London, like, you know, there's this please offer me a seat badges, but sometimes people just don't look, people don't pay attention, people are a bit apprehensive to help, you know. So there's a bit of that. I think also with being Black, like I'm from an Afro-Caribbean family, and it's just like illness is a bit taboo. I don't think it's as taboo as other cultures that my friends are part of, but there's a taboo of talking about illness, accepting illness, that it's a weakness, and that I'm not working hard enough, and there's things I can do, there's herbs I can take, which I'm not completely against, but sometimes it's just like, allow it, like it's just, you know, like, and so you've got that layer as well. And I think like that, and also, like being a woman, like, just being dismissed and not being listened to. I think all of that combo, and you know, when we have these conversations about intersectionality, like that combination of things, and that's outside the illness itself, just adds levels of challenges to it. But I will say that I guess with time I just decided to like sort of change my stance and be like, if I need help, I'm going to take it. If I need the lift, I'm going to take it. And anything that's like accessible to me that I can use to make my life a bit easier, I just started realizing I'm just going to do it. Because like, who am I performing for? Who am I like, you know? So it's tricky. I'll say it's challenging. It's just layers of challenges.
Can you name an experience in London? I have multiple. Can you name an experience in London of which you either walked away from it feeling like, why did I not stick up for myself? Why did I not say anything? Or where it's just left you feeling even worse than when you came into it?
I do, sadly. It's a weird one actually, because I've spoken about this in the parallel of like the visibility of illness. So I've had a couple hip surgeries and I have chronic hip pain. And when I so I was recovering, so I wasn't on crutches at this point, but I was like not feeling very well, and I had the please offer me a seat badge, and there's a card. They don't do the cards anymore, but there was a card as well. And this train, it wasn't like an underground, it was like a rail train, and I was in the like accessibility section of this train, and it was filled up with people, but I just couldn't stand any long, so I had to ask, and I was like, hey everyone, apologies, I have this, please offer me a seat badge, can someone please let me sit down? And I just got ignored by the whole carriage. It was embarrassing, it was so humiliating. They just looked at me, and then everyone sort of, and I don't know if they assumed, which is a whole other issue, but I don't know if they assumed I was those people that was asking for money sometimes. Maybe that's what the assumption was, but I said it again. I was like, seriously, I'm in a loss of pain. I just need to sit down. Can someone please let me have their seat? I really just need to sit down. I'm so sorry. No reply. And then I had to directly, because I just couldn't stand, I had to get in someone's face and be like, I'm so please, seriously, can I sit down? And she was like, fine. It was humiliating. But what's interesting is that only a few weeks prior I was on crutches and everybody was offering me the seat. People were being overly nice. People were offering to hold my bags when I was going up the stairs when there was no escalator. People were like, are you okay? You sure? Oh, well done for like, you know, people would like jump out their seat. So it's just interesting that the lack of a visual aid for people made them very untrustworthy of me asking for help. And if I'm going to be honest, I haven't ever asked for a seat since. I think it was just so embarrassing and humiliating. I felt this big.
Yeah. It doesn't help. It doesn't help the acknowledging. They acknowledged you, they looked at you, and then they looked away. It's that part. London, when it comes to accessibility and hidden disability specifically, because I feel like, like you said, the visual aid part is the biggest determination in how people will behave with you. And for people like me, whose my condition fluctuates so much, so like I could be walking about but I use a cane, I could be standing, I could look normal, but I could collapse on you, I could have a seizure on you any moment. So I don't like I don't like inconveniencing people. Recently I'm just like, I don't care. If it benefits me, I will take your seat, I will sit down, I will sit on your lap if I must, but I will collapse on you. So I think it's more of a thing of like education, but I feel like a lot of people know that hidden disabilities exist. So I don't know if it's more like we need to do the work to like scream and shout, but then we shouldn't have to do the work to scream and shout. But it's horrible. It's horrible. And I would love to hear, listeners and viewers at home, what is something you've experienced if you live in a big city like London. I would love to hear what it is you've gone through and how you battled that, how you overcame that. But Jamisha, how did your personal experiences with your chronic illness lead to your creation of You Look Okay to Me? Because I was reading your work, I was watching your videos, and it honestly made me, I've never felt more seen. I've never felt more seen. So how did your personal experience lead to that creation?
Well, also just to say, I'm happy that you felt seen. That always makes me feel good, like to know, especially from like Black girls as well. Well, it started similarly while I was at uni. As I mentioned before, like I was frustrated by the fact that I couldn't make creative work or in the same way that my peers could, and I felt like I wasn't really going to be able to be in some kind of creative moving image film-based industry. And then at my uni, because it was a creative one, they had this little competition where you could win £1,000 to go towards a project if you collaborated with someone who was from a different course, which I ended up doing. And so that was the initial start of it. We worked on this together, and then he was unable to do it because he has basically he was hella busy and he had ADHD. So I ended up having to, and he was struggling. So, and actually, just to say in hindsight, I was quite frustrated by his avoidance because he often was avoiding me. But then now, as I've learned more about disability, I've become a lot more empathetic to that. I've had a conversation with him about it as well and apologized because I was a bit like, why are we not getting it finished, blah blah blah. And then now I'm like, oh, he had ADHD, he was struggling. Anyway, I ended up just kind of doing the project on my own. We won the 1,000. The name came last minute. I always like, I'm now honest about it, but before I would lie and be like, oh yes, I thought of this name for a really long time. Really, I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to call it something. And then they were like, oh, wonderful name. I'm like, yeah, it took me so long to come up with that. And so yeah, I just wanted to originally do like an animated series where I was interviewing people with other illnesses and then like work with an animator to create this series. And then that didn't really work out in the way that I wanted it to. And then someone basically said to me, like, you can't expect people to feel safe to share stories that you're trying to record or to share if you're not sharing your own. You literally have the same experience as the people that you're trying to make stuff with. So why don't you just talk about yourself? I really didn't want to do that. Ironically, even though I do present videos, I am very, very shy. And so people don't believe that now, but actually that is the case. And so I was just like, oh my God, I don't want to be perceived. But I ended up just doing it. And then that's sort of where it started to click and make sense. And then it just went from there, like, and it's changed a lot. I used to sort of write written posts, and then that changed, it changed with the algorithm, really. And then I just started sort of like breaking things down and explaining stuff, and that particularly picked up when I was at BBC, because I was doing that for my day job, and then I was like, oh, I could take this format and do it on my own Instagram. And then here we are, and I've had a little sabbatical with the content, but I think this year I'll be back to sort of like trying to explore more themes of illness and stuff, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see what you do, really, because you described that your work is rooted in authentic storytelling. How did you find your voice as an artist, especially in this current industry, in this current day and age, and managing the realities of your condition?
Oh, I'm still finding it. I'm finding it. Like, I don't think I'm there yet, even with my authentic voice still, but I guess it's just weirdly it's work. It's weird. It's like acknowledging my excess needs for my creation has allowed me to tell more authentic stories, because I'm doing it the way I want to. As I mentioned before, film, it's really physically taxing, and sometimes as an artist you feel like you have to perform in the standards that are expected of you, and then I've just decided to just throw that out the window. I now work with a lot of like disabled arts organizations and stuff, and I just work in the way that makes sense. It's slow sometimes, it gets cancelled a lot because people are sick, as you know, and then we just reschedule, and it's very just like responsive to what's happening, and that's how I feel like my art is starting to come together, is just being responsive to what makes sense. I actually forgot the original question.
We're just talking about how you manage your work at the same time of managing your condition.
That as well. I still figuring that out. I have to be transparent, because I love to be like, oh, you just do this and that. Like in theory, I would say, oh, if you're tired, rest, and da-da-da-da-da. I still struggle with that, because sometimes I'm just excited and I really want to make the stuff, and I'm not listening to my body. And then sometimes there is a lot going on, and it is difficult to manage both. But I think similarly to what I just said, is more being responsive and just adapting as things change. I can't make good work if I'm not able to open my eyes because I'm that tired, or get up, or if I like, why make the work about illness if what I'm doing is going to put me in bed for months? Like, and that still may happen, but I'm trying to, I don't know, have a practice that doesn't sacrifice my body for the sake of the art. When I'm making art about illness, it just kind of feels like it's not conducive to my own self too. So I'm trying. I can't say that I have like a definitive answer for that question.
No, of course. I feel like it is very ironic, especially what you do. You can't produce and be the best version of yourself to produce that content if you're not looking after yourself, and vice versa. Listening to your body definitely is like the number one thing I can recommend for anyone, but I wouldn't have expected you to be like, oh, I do this and I drink this tea and I do this workout. Like, it's not realistic at all. And as someone who can completely relate in terms of like, I go where I see a vision, especially when it comes to work. Like if I get a brief or if I have a video idea, I need to go with it, and I need to go with it then and there. If I have an idea at 1 a.m, I will wake up and I'll go on my phone and I will plan it. I will even schedule it. I will script it. And then I can't go back to sleep because I'm like, I'm thinking about that. But like, yes, you need to let your body rest 100%. But how do you navigate the ongoing pressure that we all go through, especially as us living with chronic illnesses and hidden disabilities, to prove that your condition is real? This is a horrible question. I didn't want to ask it, but I would just love to hear your take on this.
It's a good question. It's an important question. I think the whole idea of like proving it's real also exists in different spaces. So proving it's real in a medical context is something. I would say in that regard, it's obviously number one, having to have the resounding self-belief that what you have is real. You actually have to believe that first, and to be able to like fight for yourself, because there is a thing of like when you get dismissed a lot, you do start questioning if you can trust what your body is telling you, and then you start going, oh, maybe I am making, maybe something. If you haven't got that resounding self-belief, it's hard to like prove that. So then you have to have that first. And then it's having a really good community of people around you to support you in that. So partners and family, mum, dad, all of that, friends. That's important. I think in regards to family, look, sometimes with family, they're going to believe it or not. It's going to be one of those things, but it's also kind of like finding peace with that, but also educating. I've educated quite a few of my family members about what it is like to have a chronic illness, and they're much better now. Sometimes removing myself from conversations that where it's not going to be like, you're not there, you're not getting it. I'm just, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then work. I would say that's probably one of the hardest ones because I'm freelance at the moment, but I used to work full-time in certain instances. And that was probably the hardest one because ultimately, if someone doesn't believe you at work, you might not be able to support yourself financially. Or sometimes you're having to find the balance of, should I keep it quiet and then suffer so I can pay my bills, or should I tell them and have the chance of potentially them either not giving me the job or removing my hours or all of these things? It's like it's kind of like this weird balance. I don't have a proper answer for that, to be honest with you, because I think structurally the place of work is just not it's not the best environment, I guess, for people, particularly with hidden disabilities as well. I think sometimes work can be quite responsive to disabilities they can see, they have visual aids for. It's not to say that they're treated so much better, but they're like, okay, cool, I get that. But then if your thing fluctuates and you're trying to prove that I'm not skiving, I literally am having a flare-up, and yes, I was fine at work lifting boxes 2 days ago, but okay, but now I'm not. It's just hard. That one I don't have an answer for, but it's also potentially also like knowing your legal rights and what you're entitled to, I guess.
Yeah, of course. I think you answered that perfectly.
There's so many areas of
exactly.
that.
I was going to say, and because a lot of us who have hidden conditions, it fluctuates, like you said, quite a lot. So just because I'm doing one thing one day doesn't mean I can wake up the next morning and be able to do that exact same thing, and then having to explain yourself and having to prove yourself. I shouldn't think. I'd like to think we shouldn't have to prove ourselves, and that's one thing I'm personally doing. I always advocate for it. I always tell other people to do it. Me myself, I was not doing it. I've started doing it because I've seen the impact of just not speaking up for myself. But on the other side of that, what does your rest look like? And I'm saying this as someone who can completely relate to just the go energy and acting upon impulses, but what does your rest look like besides, work and having a day off work and having a do nothing day? Like, what do you do to reset your body, reset your mind, your soul, your spirit, all the above?
That's a good question. Once again, work in progress for that. But I would say mainly sleeping, if I'm going to be honest. Mainly sleeping. Also taking one day more than I think I need. I always say to people, like, and this is not just disabled people, say it to anyone, if you're not well and you are able to, when you feel better and go, I think I can go back today, just take one more. I've always been in that position where I'm just a bit too excited to go back, and actually it wasn't quite right. So it's just like, take one extra day. Mainly it's sleeping, but it's also like being outside. If I have the spoons to be able to do so, like actually having the natural sort of sunlight on me is really helpful. Sometimes being completely alone as well, but sometimes just having a phone call with a friend. That might not seem the most restful thing, but sometimes the brain just like needs to be like reset a little bit. I do also craft, so sometimes knitting and crocheting, so that I sometimes find that if I have the spoons to do that and I'm in a restful mood to do that, because it makes me feel like I'm productive, but it's not productive that's mainly focusing on work. It's something just for me and something that's good for my mind. So it's mainly those few things, but in terms of the big one, to be honest, it really is sleeping. And getting good, trying to get good, authentic, guilt-free rest, which is the hard
guilt-free. Guilt-free rest is something that...
What is that? I don't know.
So heavy. Oh God. But in terms of... We're going to get into the more, I guess, professional, strict conversations, just because I would love to hear your take on it. But in terms of Western medicine, how do you think Western medicine has influenced how Black bodies are treated in healthcare? Wow. I know it's a bit of an intense one, but wow. I'm sure you've been to many hospitals, you've seen many doctors, you've seen many nurses. What is your personal take on that?
Oh, that question. It's that's a heavy one, but it also is the subject of quite a lot of my work. So obviously, yes, I do make content, but I'm also like make offline art things. One of my first projects was pertaining to this type of research of how Western medicine impacts Black bodies now, and essentially the conception or many of the early elements of Western medicine is founded on the mistreatment, experimentation, and enslavement of Black bodies on the continent and across the diaspora. And unfortunately, what's kind of gone on is that some of the research and some of the advancements that we've seen in like the 1700s and 1800s came off of the experimentation of enslaved African people. So whether that's gynecology, like the speculum being honed by the experimentation of Anarcha, Betsy, and Lucy. Those are the three named women that they call him the grandfather of gynecology, like experimented on. Or even when I was doing research for a project in the like UK doctors, a lot of them were trained in Edinburgh, would go to the Caribbean and be slave doctors, slave physicians, and develop this idea that Black people had a higher pain tolerance. What we then see is that despite the fact that these things are not explicitly written in textbooks, there are some unconscious beliefs that it's somehow made its way into modern doctors. Like there's even a study on it where some of them do hold the belief that Black people have a higher pain tolerance, which then trickles down to not believing Black people when they're in pain, thinking that they're drug seekers, prescribing pain medication much less at a lower rate than their white counterparts, which has happened to me directly as well. And also, like if we look at like sickle cell patients, like the demonization of them, that they're in so much pain when they have a crisis, and yet when asking for pain medication, treated like they are simply there for drug seeking. All of these negative attitudes have somehow not been addressed in the way that it should be, and that's why we see like the stats that we see, the Black maternal mortality crisis. I can go on. When we scratch the surface and look back, and the project I'm doing right now is looking at the Dutch side of it, because a lot of these European nations, not just America, but like England, France, the Netherlands, have done these things. And it's like when we asked the lack of belief and stuff that Black patients feel now, one could argue that's tied to a lot of that from way before we were in existence, and our grandparents and so on. So that's part of it, I would say. It's quite a big field of study, but it definitely needs to be addressed.
Yeah, no, we had an episode with Tanika Awe. She's a maternal health advocate. Absolutely, like I was mind blown by these statistics. We've gone through something similar. When I had my two kids, they just didn't give me the pain relief because they thought I could take it. Like, no, I'm in pain just as much as the next person. And even transcribed now into having this hidden condition and hidden disability. I think a lot of the things I experienced was feeling the need to not medicate and feeling the need just to, like, I don't know where's the stem of my pain? Like, where has this started? Like, I have a migraine. I don't really want to take medication for it, but I know I need to take medication for it because I don't want to suffer. So I think because of all of what we've been through and the history and et cetera, it's now conditioned. I don't know if you can relate, but for me personally, I'm kind of like, I can take it. Maybe I am being dramatic, maybe I don't need this medication. But I think it's a lot to do with like the inner workings and our specific conditions and how us as individuals can take it. But it's, like you said, a much deeper conversation. I think we can talk about all day long. But it's really nice to hear. It's really nice to hear your take on it, especially working in the side of like journalism. But how has creating films for you on things like on Black pain has helped you process and quote unquote heal your own experiences? Because I know it's ongoing. It's never really ending at this point. But for the past experiences, for the bad times, how has creating those films and helping you express through that medium, how has that helped you?
I think firstly, making films in that way, giving me a language to be understood. I'm not a scientist nor an official researcher. I am a journalist, but like sometimes if I were to talk about these things, perhaps there's doubt casted on my credentials. Whereas being able to then express it in an art way has just given me language to explore. It's been healing also because in the particular film I did a few years ago on Black pain, I got to include other Black people in that process. So 3 people in the film they are all friends of mine, but they all have some kind of chronic condition. When I interviewed them beforehand to be in the piece, it just was a very healing process because there was so much similarities, such as is the case of us having this conversation now. Like, mainly it was them speaking. I wasn't really talking about myself. I was just asking them stuff, and they were just saying things that are what I experienced.
Off the list, yeah.
And it just sort of felt affirming, like, oh, okay, I'm not making it up. It is real. And even though I know I'm not, hearing someone else say it, it's like, okay, I'm definitely not making it up. And then putting it together and then it being seen, like, films, art and whatnot are vehicles for conversation as well. So it's not just the piece is done and it's there. It's also that, like, I've been fortunate to then have conversations with other people about the process and to understand it. Like, that particular film was shown in China at one point. There was at a festival in China, and I was with the help of a translator, I was speaking to Chinese people who obviously were aware that Black people had been enslaved before, but didn't understand, because, you know, if that's not taught in their schools, why would they understand? Like, I mean, it's something to do with them, but they were just like, wow, I didn't know. And then being able to share stories from their perspective on, like, how living under their, like, societies and their, like, sort of the things that happen in their culture impact them being ill. It's been healing to sort of create something that then can then allow further conversations to be had. It is quite healing. I never would have seen it that way, but now that you say it, it is.
I love that you've described it as a language and creativity in any medium, whether that is written or visual, how it is a language and how that is the best way to communicate. Now that you've said that, I'm like, definitely exactly what I do. Content creation and video editing and everything of that sort is definitely my language of communicating my struggles, my disability, my condition with other people. But what is one thing that you wish more people would understand when it comes to having a hidden illness? And that could be across the board.
Wow, one thing I wish people would understand. I think, you know, a few years ago I probably would have said they're real and blah, 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 which I still believe. I still think that's one thing I'd like them to understand. But I think maybe what I could say now is sometimes, most of the time, you can't fix it. It is here. Unfortunately, for many of them, they don't have a cure. Although there's things we can do, obviously, to try and, like, improve life condition, our life quality. I find that for some people, especially people that are our loved ones, there's this discomfort and there's this want for them to fix it or for it to go away, which sometimes can come across as dismissive, can sometimes come across as frustrating, or almost like we have to manage their emotions surrounding this thing that we've got going on. It's not to say they're bad people, but I would say it's okay. It's like this is painful, this is bothering me, but it's here, and there's a level of almost like you can't fix it, and I think you have to find peace. All of us have to find peace in the fact that that is the case, and life can still be amazing and really, really full and have beautiful moments. And in fact, there's beauty in accessibility, and even though, like, my condition is painful and I struggle with it, I've had some real beautiful moments in life and met some amazing people because of that fact, and not because we're trying to fix each other or do any of that, of just radical acceptance in a way. That, I would say, is something that people, I think, could learn a bit more. I think sometimes the narrative about illness is, oh gosh, bad. And yes, there's so much about that, but there's actually also, like, a lot of beauty to be had in community and how we see the world and how we accept each other.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I think definitely it can be hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's not recovery 100%, but it's more, like you said, finding the joy in the small things, regardless of pain and suffering. I know it can be, I mean, we can understand it's incredibly difficult. Some days, like, you just want to lay in bed, you just want to close the curtains and shut off from the world. But I've realized myself that it is very important in community and in having conversations like this, because when I didn't speak about my condition, when I kind of just made it like a thing, like, I have this condition, but I'm continuing on, like, I'm still just Yara, I'm still me, like, it's a part of me, and I never accepted that until recently. So it's really lovely hearing you say that. But as a Black filmmaker and creator, Did you feel any sense of responsibility to talk about these issues? Like, besides the fact you were already talking about it, did you feel the need to keep talking about it and not talk about anything else or random things that you enjoy outside of, advocacy?
It's an interesting question. I guess it's a bit of both. I generally, this is just like my interest now. So I wouldn't want it any other way. But there is I did feel a level of responsibility to talk about it, not only with the content, but also with art and stuff, but particularly with content. Because what I was finding is that lots of people talking about disability and illness, but they were mainly white creators. And I still think it's this way in terms of there are many black creators that talk about illness. They perhaps don't get the same eyes on their work as the white creators that talk about illness. So I felt like, okay, well, if there's not as many of us, or at least there's not as many of us that are getting the eyes, I want to still talk about it even more. I want to make sure that when that we're putting a bit more sort of responsibility on whoever has these conversations, whether it's organizations, charities and whatnot, to remember that we have unique experiences inside of that, and that illness is not just how some of these other creators talk about it. It's not just race as well, it's also like class. Like not everyone can afford really amazing like power chairs, or like I have friends with ME that have to fundraise for it. So I did feel like there was this responsibility, because it's not that no one was talking about it, but I thought there needs to be more voices that are sort of pushing this. So yes, but I don't ever feel like it's cut me off from being able to talk about the other things I want to talk about, because largely this is what I want to talk about. I just generally am interested, but also if I ever want to change that, I'll do that. And to be fair, especially with the content of my audience, they've never made me feel bad for talking about other stuff. In fact, I think they're welcoming. They're like, you can show us happy moments as well, Jamisha. I'm like, oh, fair, great. So, no, I don't feel pressure, no.
Okay, that's good. I was going to say, in terms of being a black female who has a hidden disability, I think it's the fact that I felt like I was so not restricted. I felt like I was going through it by myself. I knew there were other people. I was just like, where are you? So did you feel any there's not a stigma, but how did you feel any type of way about being a black female with a hidden disability, that you needed to scream much louder in terms of talking about it and advocating? Or did you just feel like, okay, not many of us are speaking about it, but I will start to talk about it?
Do you know what I'll say? I'll say yes and no. So yes, like when I was looking at the landscape of conversations about illness, I was just like, okay, there's less of us speaking about this, let's do it. But I will say that I think there were some people, integral people, that laid some groundwork beforehand for that to not feel like I have to shout. One of them, they're a duo, one of them being triple cripples, right? They are two black women who they're called that because they have three levels of marginalization, being black women that are disabled. They started before me, and to be honest, when they started, I'm pretty sure they were some of the very first like black British women speaking about it. Their comments and responses to them were awful. From other disabled people, white disabled people. A lot of them were like, it's not black, we all have this, and no, why you bring a race into it? That's dividing it. We're just talking about disability here. They took a lot of this first wave of lots of anger, and I think really their presence made it feel like I had a space to be able to talk about it as well. I'm friends with them. And also, I think to be honest, it's understated how much groundwork they've put down for black people to be able to speak more openly about it. I think because I don't know how to say, like, so I don't feel like I need to shout, partially because
the shouting's already been
it sounds bad, but and I think also just had them to confer notes with and have conversations with, and I felt like sort of supported. There are other black people that have done that too, but them in particular sort of meant that it made me feel like, okay, well, I'm going to do it as well. And I don't feel like I need to I don't feel, I think more, it's just like, it's almost like I want to add to it. I think the more, like, do you get what I mean? I'm struggling to answer that question, but I think that's
I completely get it, because the shouting, the screaming, the groundwork has already been laid. They took the first wave of that intense discrimination and the comments, which is, I get it, but I think as humans, we all go through our own internalized and separate struggles, and unfortunately we are put into these categories, whether that is a white person with a disability, a black person with a disability, and etc. So they founded this space for us to be able to talk about it. So thank you so much for bringing them to my attention. I definitely will check them out.
Oh, please do. They're fantastic.
They seem like they're doing amazing work, and it definitely needs to be raised much more
100%.
than it already has been doing. But have you faced any internalized stigma about your illness, and how did you overcome that? I'm sure you have.
Yes, internalized stigma being I always feel lazy. I feel like I'm not doing enough, and I feel like, if I'm going to be frank, I know I have lupus. I know it's real. There's a teeny tiny voice that says that maybe it's not, and maybe one day I'm going to be exposed for the fraud. I know logically that's not true, but it's still there, and partly that exists because of the initial dismissal that I had. I also had a diagnosis reversal, then it got put back. So when I was first getting diagnosed, I had all these tests, and then got diagnosed quite flippantly, then went back and then got told, no, you don't have lupus, actually, I've changed my mind. It's in your head, you've got a mental health problem. And that's not to understate how real and serious mental health issues are. And you need to take antidepressants and see a psychiatrist. Then I complained, got referred to the lupus clinic in London, and then was like diagnosed within 2 seconds. Again, he's like, of course. And I've been with that clinic ever since. But I go there only once a year. And when I go, I still feel like this is the moment they're going to look at all the tests and go, yeah, actually, we've been wrong this whole time. You don't have that. It just still feels like that. It still feels like, and it feels like I did this to myself as well. The stigma that I should carry is that I did something wrong. Maybe it was all the sweets that I ate when I was a kid, or maybe I should have slept more in high school. I don't know. It just feels like maybe I did something. And in fact, a couple of times I have asked my rheumatologist, it's like, did I do that? Like, is there anything? I sometimes get like a proteinuria. I get protein. My kidneys leak protein a little bit. And I'm always like, is it me? Is it something I ate? Is it something? And they were like, you literally didn't do it. Like, it's just, it just is what it is.
Where do you think that comes from? Where do you think that's like stemmed from?
I actually think it's almost like a desperate want to be able to find, if it's my fault, then I can fix it.
Right.
So it's like, I can do something about it. You know, sometimes like you have an argument with someone and it's actually not your fault, but you sometimes take the responsibility so you can heal. Yeah. So you're just like, you know what, I shouldn't have blah, 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 blah. And really, no, that person is not a nice person. But like, it's easier because they're not going to change. I can't change them, but I can maybe change me.
Right.
I think it's a bit of that. And it's also just, I think inner voices can be really mean in general. And we blame ourselves for a lot of things that are not our fault, or at least are not completely our fault. So... yeah, those are some of the stigma that I am faced with. And it's less now than it was 10 years ago, but it is still there.
I can completely relate to that. Completely relate to it, especially the going back and forth with the diagnosis. Like, okay, I've come to terms that I have this condition. Oh, wait, I don't have it? Okay, what did I do wrong? Back and forth. But it's been such an amazing conversation. But where do you want to leave listeners and watchers who can completely relate to the conversation we've had? What advice would you give them walking away, like from today, to go on about their day-to-day life, to make their life just a little bit easier with all that we go through?
Illness is not a moral failing. It's not a sign of lack of low character, lack of effort, laziness, badness. It's none of that. It just is. It happens. I even say this for people who have, like let's say someone maybe got a lung condition because of smoking. I even say that for them. It's like things happen. There are also people who are 100 that smoke their whole life and they don't have a lung thing. You just happen to have it. Sorry. It's not a sign of moral failing. And there is beauty in community in sharing. Not everyone's comfortable sharing, but if you do happen to have an illness and stuff, finding community and connecting with people that understand and have space for that, whether they're disabled or not, is a really great start. It's very beautiful, and it's more healing than I think I even first knew. And for those who are not ill, not to scare you, but illness can happen to anyone at any time. And some people say, this is quite harsh, but people go, you're not disabled yet. Because even if you never are disabled your most of your life and you get to old age, at some point, you might become disabled. And think about maybe just the ways in which you can make the world more accessible for all, to make it like a world that's just nicer. That would be good.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for joining and for having such an important conversation with me. What is your social handles for people who would like to find you?
My social handles are You Look Okay to Me. We are mainly on Instagram, but YouTube pending and loading, relaunch happening. So find us on YouTube and Instagram. I say us, it's really just me. Yeah, and sometimes TikTok.
Of course, I'll leave all of your links and social handles down below. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening and watching. And don't forget to tune into the next episode at the Better Left Unsaid podcast. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.